Good morning. Welcome to the Electrical Committee on Thursday, July 6th. Present are Councilman Hockett and Councilman Clay. Appointed City Attorney Paul Jensen, Public Works Director Troy Kruger, and Electrical Superintendent Curtis Hawkins. I'll turn it over to Troy or CJ. There's a lot to talk about. It's been a fun week.
Give me 2 seconds.
You got her. Did you have a fun week?
Not too bad, yeah, it was all right.
So, last Friday we had visitors from DGR and our money that was appropriated for 2023. We did a system overview and they're working on that. They came here to visit and to actually put their eyes on some stuff. I thought it was a really good visit. We got an updated map that's about as updated as Winter's had in a long, long time. We were also, Kurt was able to show them, put their eyes on some projects that he's working on, and so that gives us the go-ahead, and he's got questions answered that he needs to go with pretty much finished projects this summer, start on some stuff for next year. Big question for everybody, I guess, was they were able to come out and look at our substation, and so that was a lot of. It was just good for them to be out there so they could tell us our options and what we're looking at. And what they were, I guess, they were overall with our substation. They were satisfied. They thought our transformer looked like it was in good condition, and you guys just did some testing on it here.
We just did oil testing on it. Everything came back good. The one issue with the town that we have one substation that is one feed point that feeds the entire town. That goes down, we're in the dark. Most towns have multiple taps on it. The one issue that I've always worried about is if that goes down, what do we do next? There's potentially a tie between us and a Rosebud transformer. We don't have enough information on that with it. That's something that we're gonna reach out and try to figure out if they can back up us and we can back up with them. I mean, that's it's a main issue. I mean, it's an Achilles heel for the electrical system. We got a couple other ones out there that we just are gonna be able to deal with. The other thing would be all of our feeders are running out the same path, running right there. We get a storm, it takes those out, we're in the dark right there. It's some of that stuff you can't control it just the way it is. As far as line, this is something that we can potentially be on top of it with it, so it's something that we'll reach out with. They seemed a little bit more at ease at 2. We talked about only having that one sub for the town and everything like that.
Unknown caller.
With that tie, hopefully something is in there to work out or something like that, and that would benefit both parties on there. We do believe that it could be a possibility, so it's a little bit of ease of mind at that point as far as that goes. The study that they're doing for us right now, they're going to come in, and we kind of talked about it, and Troy, you hadn't got in there, and neither you, Jody, but they'd asked kind of where we see growth in town, and they're just trying to figure out as far as wire sizing and stuff like that, how they can prepare as we move forward, bearing whatever it may be, that way we're not paying for stuff twice, so that'll be good. So this was kind of the kickoff is what they called it. They're going to put together a presentation, and they're either going to come back during a committee meeting and present it to you guys, and then I think at that point we could...
Who's they?
GNR. Yeah. And at that point, probably invite everybody, I guess, as far as the council, I would assume, just so we don't have to say it twice or remember stuff. But and they're going to give us numbers of that. They kind of talked to me about what our 5-year plan, 10-year plan as we move forward. And we kind of talked about burying stuff. Well, what do you want to bury? And I kind of said single phase stuff just because we can knock it more out. We can get more buried at a time and then start moving into kind of the bigger 3-phase feeder wires, stuff like that is kind of where we pointed ourselves to. So they'll take that into consideration. They're going to come in here and look at our system as a whole and say, yeah, I know you guys wanted to do this project, but this one's far worse. This is something that we need to do something about within 1 or 2 years, or now, or whatever it may be. So that'll be good information for us. They'll put together numbers. They're going to say, well, this is what it's going to cost you with your 5-year plan going at this route, your projects, our projects, stuff like that. So they're going to be kind of ballpark close numbers, though, as far as what they know. They work with numerous different towns and stuff like that, so they got a pretty good idea with it. But they'll present all that stuff and show what they find. And they kind of mentioned a couple of other studies that we should look into. One of them was kind of a coordination study. I think that'd be good for this town. One of the things that, with talking to Ty from the first time he started here, he said that they would lose a piece of line clear on the northwest part of town and they would take it out to the sub. With the coordination study, they're actually telling us what size of fuses to put in where. And so something happens on the northwest part of town, we're not taking out a third of the town all the way back. And we've ran into that a couple of times since I've been here, and we're slowly trying to kind of piece it together. Like one of the ones was kind of up by the hospital. We had something burn up there and it took a third of the town out. Well, we cut in fuses there, but there are other ones out there that I've seen that I'm like, yeah, we need to get something in there. We just did one the other day, and then they'd be able to pinpoint it. And then with the coordination study, they're going to give us the right fusing size on there instead of us linemen out there kind of guessing, well, we got this much kVA transformers, we're going to put this in. Well, it might be not working with down our system, so we set that fuse there. Well, it isn't going to work. We're going to end up taking this out anyways, so they'll help us in that too on some things. That'd be a good study. Another study, they said it was an arc flash study. An arc flash study is they just try to figure out fault current, how far out in the system the fault current, and it really ties into the lineman's safety at that point. You start talking about what type of clothing we got to wear and what situations and stuff like that. And it's kind of I think towns do it about every 10 years, or electric systems do it about every 10 years, unless they have an increased amount of load. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's how it goes with it. So that's something that I would suggest that next year, maybe that kind of coordination study type of a thing. We'll see what other problems they find too, but kind of moving into those.
They weren't excited about doing it either. They're like,
Yeah,
those studies are no fun to do, but
Yeah.
they are a necessity. And we looked back. I did actually look back after we met with them. We can't find the last time Winter did one.
So
Nobody knows.
Any idea what the study cost?
I wouldn't know. I'd say 5,000 to 10,000, somewhere in there. You're not like that mapping. When they gave us the quote on that, I was very surprised at how little it cost. Like their mapping, it went over a little bit, but I think the bill that I got was like $5,600 or something like that. And I mean, I've talked to them 10 hours probably total about our mapping and stuff. So I mean, plus all the time that they've been working on it. So it's not. I was surprised at how cheap that was, to be honest with you. So with that paper map, they're giving us digital maps too. They got it linked down to meters, to transformers on the digital maps and stuff like that. We're going to be able to go through there and mark it up as we go. And then as far as the mapping goes in the future, they kind of talked to me about that, if we want to do it every 6 months or every year as far as updating it and stuff like that. So that's kind of a personal preference, I guess, as far as that goes, I guess. I don't know if I get to make that call, but I figured it would be kind of a every 6-month deal, maybe more every kind of at the end of the summer when we're all done, and then we go back out there and we might find some other things and have them update it before we start into the kind of digging season again type of a deal on there. But so that was kind of a few of the things. One of the other things that I had talked to him about was some of the equipment that we actually had in inventory. I think I mentioned it to you guys about it, that they were wrong, but I did, as far as these switches that were setting out there, we were able to send them back and have them, I don't know if you want to call them refurbished, but switched over to the ones that we need to have. And we can, I think we have 5 or 6 of them out there. They quoted me per switch, $3,800 per switch to do it. I think to buy a brand new one, it was $26,000. So we can get all of them done for less than a
The
new
price
one.
of a new one.
We'll probably end up having to, as we bury further, we'll have to buy new ones, but this, at least we're not sitting on $100,000 worth of equipment that we,
Unusable and
yeah, on there. So that is 14 weeks out on them too, as far as, we gotta pay to ship them there, they pay to ship them back, but it's definitely something that is obviously, I think that we would have to do as far as it goes. And I was gonna make that call kind of at the November timeframe. I'm about 90% sure I'll have enough money left over in the budget to do it, but I was gonna hold it out through the, we're not gonna have to set any more of them out as far as the stuff that we're doing right now, so we'll just hold off on it till November and make sure that we have the money if type of a deal, so. And I think we will with it. I haven't went that crazy yet, so as far as spending, so. With it, and then I did print off 2. I know we were talking about transformers. Here's the quote that I got from them. That is the total number on there. I think it's 33 transformers, 30 of them are single-phase pad mounts, and then 3 three-phase pad mount transformers, and it's $277,000. 3 years out for the single phase, a year out for the 3-phase on there, so.
the 1 year out for the 3 phases.
Yeah, as of now, I think. Right. Well, I lied to you on that. No, 52 weeks on some of them, I guess. A couple of them other ones might be a little bit more.
One of the other options on the mapping deal, I was able to talk to the one guy about it a little bit. As we go forward with this underground stuff, we get more stuff underground, obviously with overhead. It's right there, you drive up, you see it, but we've started it in the water department. We've started GISing everything. And so they have our data from the water department. They said our data is excellent on what we've done so far in the water department. So as we get moving forward with more underground stuff, that's a possibility too. And then these guys can, when they get something done, they can just go out and GIS it and send that data to them, and they can actually have digital maps and everything for us right after we get that done. I think another good conversation we had with them that I know has been asked a couple of different times in this committee was on the EVs. And I guess just to kind of reiterate what they said is everyone's just kind of like South Dakota, everyone's kind of just sitting there watching right now. There's not a whole lot of stuff being done.
EV, electric vehicle. right?
Electric
Okay,
vehicles.
thanks.
The big question is the charging stations, and they were really quick to say that, you know, some of these small towns, some of these quick charging stations that are out there, because that question's been asked, they're really not even realistic in some of these small towns. And they said, you know, you're not gonna see them pop up in Winter, South Dakota, or, you know, someplace. They're gonna be on the main, you know, and we know that there's a couple in the state, but, I mean, our more realistic conversation in our community was the people that buy EVs and the charging stations that they put in their homes, and what that would do to our overall electrical system, and how it could, obviously, you know, we've had that conversation ourselves a couple of different times, and Kurt's, you know, gave us his thoughts on it, and it was pretty much spot on with what these guys said. You know, we don't have the infrastructure to support if everybody on the whole block puts in, you know, within a couple of weeks, puts in a slow charging station. We'd have to control that somehow, and they said the same thing. They're gonna have to get a handle on it. You're gonna have to find out who has these vehicles, and then put them on load management or some kind of a, you know, can only charge during these hours, you know, that kind of a deal. But they said overall in South Dakota, they're kind of just, everybody's just kind of sitting back and watching right now, because nobody really knows what's happening. They think a lot along the lines of, like a lot of people in the Midwest think, the electrical vehicles, these guys seem like they knew what they were like quite a bit more knowledgeable than us, but they said, you know, it's a given. The EVs do not do good in the cold. They just don't do good in the cold. They don't have combustible engines, so there's not a heat source there to tap off of, so they have to create their own heat source, and that's really taxing on the batteries. And so it's just in our climate in the winter, those vehicles, so they're, like I said, everyone's just sitting back and kind of watching right now. They don't think that the EVs are going to be a big deal. That the slow charging stations, we talked about a couple different scenarios. How do we find out who has them? I guess, to me, in my opinion, would be to work with the county, and when somebody comes in and registers a vehicle, that they notify the city. If it's in the city limits, they let us know that they're registering an EV, and then give us that information so we know that they're putting it in. And then we can address it at that point. But I think I've seen one in town, and I don't even know that for sure, but anything else that you can?
Their main thing was, when it comes to that stuff, and they kind of pulled it back into kind of like the kind of cyber coin mining things. They said you gotta be able to make them interruptible, meaning you can control when they have power and when they can't. So when we hit peak times, we can shut them off. And he said they dealt with one cyber mining thing, and they said that the fast chargers, they're seeing them along the interstates. It's kind of where they're seeing them, not so much in here, but he said the main goal is to try to push it to be interruptible. So he's like, the thing that you run into is, it's a great place to sell power, but when you're selling power at your peak time, it's not the great time to do that. So if you can interrupt it, but what they kind of showed us was, okay, you're at your peak, it could double the load of, we'll say, that house, right, when they're charging it. Well, if they're plugging it in at 9, 10 o'clock at night, and then it's done charging at 6 a.m., their house is going to stay at its peak for the entire day, basically, so you're going to be selling power. Well, during the night, our peak's going to be down. Well, we're actually going to be kind of closer to our peak as far as being able to sell power at our best profit during those times. And so it'd be a great money maker, but we can't handle it. Everybody plugs in their car at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and it's 100 degrees out there, and all of our ACs are running or whatever it may be. So we need to be able to interrupt something at that point to bring it back down on there. And that's what they kind of said as far as interruptible services is kind of the main thing that you want to look at as far as that, because I don't think we can't control what type of vehicle a person buys necessarily, but we could kind of control, well, yeah, you can have that, but these are the times. And they've suggested kind of the time of use billing too when it comes to that if it wasn't interruptible, and they said make them pay for it. He said that was the biggest thing they said was make them pay for it, and if he said that's where you got to figure out the line is of how much you charge for them to say, well, if you're gonna keep doing it, this is what we're gonna charge you.
Because if we go over peak, everybody shares that burden, don't they?
Well, that, the city pays for the, over, like, once we get charged for our peak demand charge, I mean, the city's the one that's making less at that point, as far as that, because we're only charging, is it 10 kilowatt an hour? That is-
10.1.
Yeah, and we're not charging, if we go, we don't have a time of use charge, so you're getting 10 flat rate all the way through this on there, and we might be paying whatever for this kilowatt hour at our peak, and then when we're not on peak, we're paying for this. We're getting charged time of use, so a citizen's getting paid a flat rate. We got the variable rate of time on there, so.
But that's where our new meters and load management, and we can see who's using it. We can set that price that if, what Kurt, I think CJ is saying is, you see that meter spike and you know that they're charging an EV during that time, you set an ordinance that instead of 10.1 or a commercial rate, you sock them at $1 a kilo or whatever.
Yeah, it's,
If you're not gonna charge in the hours that we want them charging, 10 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning, when we have low load, then we pop them for that and make it interruptible.
yeah.
So it looks like in your transformers for your 2024 budget, you need $150,000 because they could show up next year,
Some
correct?
of them could, yeah, them three-phase ones. I haven't done anything with that. We did put them out for bid. As far as those numbers, nobody bid it. I reached out for quotes. It's the only quote I got on there. And they, so that would kind of be added. I think some of them three-phase ones would probably show up within the year if we ordered them, you know, today or whatever it may be. Those, the timeline thing on those, they're saying that, but they're not. So that was kind of the thing. I know that we got in a discussion about that. I don't know, you know, that's one of the things, how do we do this? You know, we end up needing these, we don't know when they're gonna show up, so how do we budget for this? Is it something that we gotta keep in there every time? And then when they do show up, we have the money to pay for it, or, cause I wouldn't say, I hate to say it, the price isn't a hard price on them, and neither is the date on there. That's the two things that you guys wanna know about. And I can't say that's the thing for it. All I can say is, for some type of money, at some time, a green box will show up to us. That's about it with it, and.
We do
Yeah.
need to start putting money away for that, and with the thought that, you know, if it doesn't get spent in 2024, we need to roll that over into
Yes.
2025, and we need to have that money available so that when they do show up, we can make that purchase, because if we don't, there is no, oh, put us on the list, or we don't want them now, because if you don't take them when they're available, we drop back down, well, we may not see them again for another 2 or 3 years, so we just gotta have that money available when that time comes, when they do show up.
And I know we've talked kind of about like a 5-year contract with those. When I was talking to this salesman that gave me that quote, he said that's very doable, and we could get into those slots, and then we would be able to get a more, you know, it would get a little bit more, yep, you're slotted for 30 or 35 transformers every year. So, you know, obviously it's gonna take 3 years or 2 years to get to that point, but then after that, we may have a better understanding of time and price at that point, because we're gonna be slotted in there. The one thing that what COVID did for this industry, before they would take any order, you could come to them, I want 100, I want 100, I want 100. Well, they can only make 300 of them a year. Well, they've really narrowed down how many they can make, and that's where they're at right now. So they're only selling that many slots, or having that many places, and they're all getting taken up either by companies or, you know, the vendors are still saying, well, we have 2 slots open, yeah, we'll take them, these are our most common transformers we sell, and they will do them and put theirs in there. And so that's where we could actually kind of possibly get our name in the 30 of those slots that they have, and it would be a more common type of a thing. He told me 1s and 2s transformers, you're never gonna get a quote, and you're never gonna get them built for you. He said you're just gonna have to take to get what you get. I have, this year, I think I've bought 3 or 4 transformers of just a salesman calling me up saying, I had this company back out on these 2. Do you want them? And I've purchased them that way. And as far as I think the last time we bought them, they probably went up 400%. I think like a 50 kVA, we were at $1,100 buying a transformer, and now it's, well, I guess it's 7,000, I think, or something, or 6,000 on there, whatever it may be. So they've went up a huge amount on there. And then we've kind of talked about if the federal government changes the cores in them, if they want to go to that magnificent core, it's just going to get worse. So, I mean, then I talked to them engineers about this, and I asked them about this brand new transformer, and they said they're good, and they said right now we are not telling any of our clients don't go with this brand of transformers. He said you're taking what you can get. He said in the past we've said stay away from this brand of transformer. We've stayed away from kind of refurbished, rebuilt ones. But he's like, right now we're just telling them you take what you can get. He said you just need it. So we're not being picky, because I did tell him that we'll get some refurbished transformers. As far as some that we've had out there, we're gonna have them refurbished, and they're like, yeah, before we would tell you not to, with the price and everything like that, just it's better just to get rid of them and buy new. But he's like, right now you got to take what you can get. So
And that's not necessarily our, the way that we typically do business, but, we take quotes on things. Kurt and I have had this conversation multiple times, and he's been very good about calling me and letting me know when something comes available. And, hey, I think we need to jump on this, because we don't know when the next one's gonna be available or show up. The only thing that Kurt's made sure that everything, the hookups, everything that, with that transformer work for him. But if it's available and we can get it, we've went ahead and purchased. So, as far as the bidding process goes, we went through that process, and, the companies that, and it's like normal, we don't get any response to our bids.
Yep.
So then he has to go find the next, he goes and gets quotes, and same thing he runs into theirs 2 to 3 years out, but he's been kind of getting them through the back door process, and that's just kind of what we're.
The other thing that we just need to keep in mind is that we need to continue doing the annual bidding on the thing. We gotta jump through that hoop to take the step to try to bid them, so that we know that nobody's gonna come back and bid on them but that checks the box for us, so it opens the door to us to be able to do that direct negotiation when we need to.
And in that bid process, there's usually a timeline, like
Yep.
within 1 year, because we're gonna rebid again with 1 year, and right now you're not gonna give any company
Nobody's
to
gonna
give you a.
So let's revisit the 5-year bid. If we do the 5-year bid and get slotted for those 30 slots a year for 5 years, do we still want to bid out for the singles that may come up?
Well, I guess I would put that question back to these two, as far as, is that something you want to keep that door open for you to be able to fill in?
To buy the 1s and 2s in addition to those slots, or is that enough?
well,
Does that tie you to that bid then?
If you take that 5-year bid and accept it, it would.
That's kind of the bad deal is, you don't want, at this, it's such a up and down deal right now, is
I would
that
say
you don't
that-
want to be tied to anything where you're guaranteed to one producer, because something may open up over here where they have exactly what we need and they have exact amount that we need, but if we're tied to this and we can't make that purchase, we're not gonna get them.
Noted?
I would say we'd want to be tied to the 5-year, because then we're guaranteed. The ones at Tuesdays that picked up, it's been underneath the number where I have to even come talk to you guys about. They've been underneath kind of that $4,000 amount. I've had one 3-phase one and I wasn't able to jump on it because it was a $25,000 one. Wasn't gonna get bids back in time, and you know, obviously these vendors can go to investor owns and co-ops where they don't have to jump through those hoops, and you know, they're picked up pretty fast on that. So if we were tied to the bid, at least then it might get to the point of, I wanna say, a normalcy of, well, next year we know we're getting these 30 transformers or whatever it may be. You know, we're gonna have to wade through the waters for a couple, 2-3 years or whatever, but we can get back on that track of seeing them every
But
year.
if we're tied to that 5-year and something comes up for availability of 1 or 2 of these, in addition to where we're slotted on the 5-year, we could still take advantage of those, could we not, as long as we did the annual process
A
of
second bid.
throwing out for a second bid and getting no
Well,
response?
See, that's
We could do a
exactly
5-year
what
and a
Kurt's
1-year.
talking about is, one of these vendors has, they have exactly the transformer that he's talking about, $25,000. They're going down the list, and they're saying, you know, hey, I have this transformer available, do you want it?
Right.
If he says, well, I gotta talk to my council,
Right.
we're gonna have to put it out for bid, he's just gonna say, okay,
No.
I'm gonna call the next person.
No.
He's gonna go right
But-
down.
What I'm talking about in the end of December, we do an annual, every year we do that.
Right.
Put it out for bid in the end of December.
So we lock ourselves in.
So we lock ourselves in, but we know that, at least historically, none of these providers are responding to the bids.
So we could have 2 bids out. We're not gonna get the bid on the 1s or the 2s, but you'd have the guaranteed
Right.
one
Right.
for the 30. And then the other one, because you don't receive a bid for the 1s and 2s, you can still negotiate in exactly that scenario
And
where
that's
if
where
one
I'm at,
comes
yeah.
open.
So would it be such a case that Kurt could give us, okay, this is what I have in it for inventory. This is what we would like to purchase in the next couple of years. And give him or myself and him the ability to, if those oddballs come up,
Yes.
whether they be $3,000 transformers or
Yes.
$50,000 transformers,
You would have that ability.
we would
to
have that
buy.
ability to,
That would be
to
the-
to say,
That'd be the goal, yep.
yep, we'll take it. You know we need it, it's available, we'll take it.
We're talking about giving you the best of both worlds.
Right.
The annual and the 5-year.
So what is the number that Kurt can authorize without council approval?
$4,000.
Huh?
$4,000.
I gotta
4,000.
get bids at 4,000, right?
But if we've already done the
100,000.
annual bid, we get this 5-year bid, but we do an annual bid and get no response, and a onesie twosie comes up, that is what number?
That's what I'm asking
We
for.
have to go to bid at 100,000
Well-
on electrical, correct?
But we've already went to bid.
We've already gone to bid and we've received no bids, so it's open to be, from the standpoint of your question,
I see what he's saying.
you start out with that $4,000 amount that state statute says above that, you gotta go to that next,
You gotta-
the next
Then he's got to
step.
try to get 3 quotes.
Even though we've done an annual bid,
Correct.
Well, we put out for an annual bid and nobody
no
bid it,
response.
so it leaves it open to us to be able to negotiate.
So then, below 4,000, he can just buy it, budgetary.
Yep.
Anything above that, we don't have to go to a 3-party bid, but he has to get council approval.
Even from 4,000 to 100,000, he would have still full authorization to purchase those as long as he tried to get quotes after the bid.
Correct.
So that's why I would say, best case scenario for him would be,
That's a good
if in
question, Jeremy.
2024 budget, he can give you an inventory of what he needs to buy. Okay, I need these transformers. These are the transformers that I need to have sitting on my lot. Obviously, anything below $4,000, he doesn't need anybody's approval. But if you guys would give him approval to, if one of these size transformers comes available, he has the authority to go ahead and buy it
He does
With-
already.
without
He does already up to $100,000.
It's up to 100,000 because you've been through that process.
And I can say I'll take it and then go out and get my other two
Non-quote.
quotes.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
let's say
If you
this
get no other-
this $25,000 transformer, but my next two quotes are 18,000, 19,000, and I just write down and say, it's available. The other ones are 50 weeks out, 70 weeks out.
Correct.
But you guys still have to prove that this was okay. Obviously, you know the situation that we're
No.
in. Or
No,
they don't.
if it's in your budget and it's appropriated
Up to 100,000.
up to 100,000, even from that 4 to 100,000, you have to show council that you've looked at other options, okay? If one's at 25, this one's at 25, there's one at 18 and one at 16, but 1 year out, 18 months out, available now, you put that on that quote sheet.
Yep.
You submit your purchase order with that quote sheet, and when it comes through claims, if it's questioned, council will have seen you've went through the bid process, received no bids. So now you're free to negotiate. You've negotiated, you got a price, you went and got two other prices. The availability is not there for what you need at this point. You can purchase that. That is your authority as the electrical superintendent. You've been hired to do that job. You do
Because we
have,
funded that line through the budget process in a transformer line, like Troy's saying.
Yes.
This is my wish list, da, 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 da. At any point in time, I'm gonna request $50,000 be put in this transformer budget, I would say.
yes,
And then we have 150,000 annual, we have to put in this 5-year, whatever.
yes.
And then, so if any, if any of these come available during this process.
So this process is there for you. Once you went through budget and it's appropriated and you've taken the proper bid letting steps, all you're doing as an officer of the city of Winter is showing council that you went through your due diligence and followed the process. You can write that PO because you have to make the decisions in the best interest of the city of Winter immediately, especially with these supply chain issues. So you don't need approval. You just have to do your due diligence, document it, and make sure it's filed with your PO. So if council questions it, they can pull that up and say, oh, look, he's done all the proper process.
The documentation is the key.
It is.
My favorite word again.
Where we differ of opinion on this too, Jody, and we do differ, is I like the budgetary lines, because we go through in our whole transparency, we've talked about it, like Troy said, you said, this is my targeted goal. I want to get some of these ones and twosies, and we at that time fund that line instead of, we've had conversations where it's in your entire budget.
It is.
You can move it from here and there, and that's kind of what Jody said. I feel different, that we've already had that conversation on the front side, and you've got a target, we funded that, we've had that, and then I agree it's your full authority because we are aware of the plan.
The full authority is the bottom line.
I understand, and that's where we vary.
I just want these guys to
Yeah.
hear that, but that bottom line, so if 50,000 is in there for this line, and you have to make two purchases of 27,000, and it takes you to 54,
Yeah.
I think you have that authority, because then now you manage the rest of your budget, you have to make up that
I
4,000
get-
someplace else.
I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I asked for 25,000 for poles, and I was just throwing out there, and they went for like $1,300 is the quote, over that money.
Yeah.
Like, I get that, and then obviously I can see, well, we had 114 in there, it's like, what the hell?
It's
do
just
we-
a talking
The bottom
point.
line
Yeah.
is,
I get
it's
where you're
your
coming from.
budget.
Yeah.
It is your budget, and I don't disagree with that, and I feel you should be able to manipulate your budget.
To make it
But
work.
I always feel, bring people along with you, say, hey, you know, we had 50,000 in there, blah, blah, blah.
I get it.
Oh, I agree with the conversation and you needing to be briefed. When we come into these committees, I think it's fair for each department, if they go over a line, to say, listen, I had this opportunity, you'll see my purchase order went through, and I'm over 4,000, I'll make it up in the rest of my line, but I want you to know I'm over 4,000. Just, it's a discussion. I think council, because they're in charge of the taxpayer funds need to be briefed, but you're good to go there.
Yeah, I get what Jeremy's saying. He doesn't want me to go spend 150,000 on transformers and then 35 on poles when I only had 30,000 in the budget, and then I gotta come whine to him about giving me another $5,000.
They're probably not gonna fund any more money
That's-
at that
I get where
point.
he's coming from, and
Yeah.
I look at it, I guess, at that sense of like, oh, this can't, if we did spend $1,200, well, I won't buy this then, and it might be, yeah, we were gonna get a tool that would be useful to us, well, we just won't get that this year. That's, you give and take with it, I understand that.
Do you have a comment?
We have a lot of fun with that. He's smiling and nodding.
No, it's appropriate that we fund, I think that for these transformers, we go ahead and put it in the budget. And how you manage your budget within the best interest of the taxpayers of Winter, that's what I expect.
Yeah.
And as long as you're doing that, if there's a problem, you come to us, you come to the council. If you're over that scenario that you just expressed, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, you come to the council, you tell us that, keep us informed of where we're at so that we know, we want to know where our money's going.
Yeah.
We want to know what it's spent. We don't want some manager out there for the city willy-nilly going here and there, spending, we want to keep control of that because that's what we're elected to do.
Yeah,
No reflection on you guys whatsoever. It's just that that's our role, that's our function.
yeah.
So when the mayor said, keep us informed, that's what we like. We want to be informed. If there's, something going like that, let us know. We want to be informed.
Yeah.
Even if council's gonna growl a little
We
bit, a
need to
couple of
fund
them.
it. We need to fund. I'm behind funding. We
Yeah.
need to get this in the budget. When they're available, we need to be able to purchase them. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
So we started this process last year. It had happened back 18 and prior, but we haven't done it since 18 until this last year, and that was encumbering funds that were appropriated in a line. So if we go, this quote is 277, and you have 150,000 in there, and those single phase don't come in this year, and that line, that 150 remains in your bottom line, you can request council take that from this year's budget and pull it forward into next year's budget with the 150 they budgeted there to make it 300,000, which would allow this to, we could take them all in 72 weeks and pay for it all with the encumbering process.
But when we encumber
Remember,
it, it only can
encumber.
be used for transformers, all right? If we encumber it for
Yes,
transformers.
yes, that is a great point, Jeremy, yes. Yes. There are tools in the toolbox to help council help you get what you guys need. And that's one that we hadn't used since 2018.
No, that's something we talk about all the time is, the enterprise departments, Kurt's department, Mark's, water, sewer, they don't spend their money, it goes back into their, not into their budget, but into their, it stays in
Unappropriated.
departmentally, it stays in their department. Our departments that are funded by the general, if they don't spend that money, it goes back to the general, and they don't get it back in their budget unless they ask for it. And so that's where the tool like that really comes in
Yes.
handily, because those departments don't have the luxury of keeping their budget in that department. So, that's a real possibility, with some equipment that we'd like to see in streets. Trucks are really hard to come by. Kelly needs a couple of dump trucks. That's not a given that we'll be able to find a couple of decent used dump trucks. So you don't want that money to just go away. You want to be able to keep shopping and buy when you do find something. Part of the process, I guess. Budgeting, next meeting, we will have a mock budget for you guys to look at. We're gonna, we started yesterday. Today, we're gonna sit down with Rhonda. We're gonna kind of project personal services for the rest of the year so that my 4 supervisors can see what they have left in their budgets, so they can spend appropriately. And then we're also gonna look at, what the same services are gonna cost them for next year's budget. And we're gonna roll with that. They're bringing their wish list up to the meeting in the next couple of times we meet. We'll have that all for you, and then some of the, we'll try and, like I said, we'll have that mock budget next Thursday, or two Thursdays from now, with just kind of a really bare bones for you guys to pick apart, I guess. Go at it with us and
Or not.
have
Not picking
questions.
apart.
Oh, they'll pick. That's the goal, is to have all the public works have an imaginary budget for the next meetings, so we can start that process and have quotes for you on equipment and machinery and materials and project lists, what they want to do and what they see themselves doing in 2024.
I guess the one thing with having these engineers involved too, I mean, they're gonna be able to start nailing down like the transformer things, you know, how many we actually need and stuff like that as far as, so that'll be something good. I had talked to them about designing a few more projects next year as far as some of that stuff. That way we can kind of get the material list more nailed down than instead of a rough guess, but.
I'm excited. Jared and,
Dan? He was the other guy.
yeah,
Hey,
Daniel.
yeah, that's one of the good things, you know, I'm gonna end up putting some of that for that as far as money. The one thing that I did notice is there's a lot of inventory that we have on there that it seemed like it got bought because we had money in the line or whatever it may be.
Just random, just
And,
purchases.
you know, it's kinda like these switches, you know, and they'll be able to nail it down a lot better.
This is what you need.
And we can start constricting, you know, if we gotta cut from here, but we gotta put more money into there, we can start seeing the bigger picture a lot better. It'll be a lot better for the department, I guess, too, as far as that, because, yeah, we do have quite a bit of stuff on there that I don't know why it got bought. I'm sure they had a reason for it, but my vision might be different than theirs, so we can kinda get it nailed down a little bit more. We can probably get our dollar a little bit further, especially at this time.
The biggest thing I took away from that meeting was the Rosebud substation out there.
Yeah.
And the interconnectivity of those two to allow you to do maintenance on yours if you need to,
Yeah.
for them to offload from another area.
Do we acquire power from the same sources as Rosebud?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's actually not our sub, it's WAPA's
Okay.
substation. WAPA owns the substation. We just, well, the city of Winter and Rosebud Electric have equipment in it, but it's all WAPA power.
Our substation or this other one you're talking about?
It's all in one substation.
The one on south of town down there, WAPA technically owns it.
So if we need to replace it, we're paying for their repairs to it.
We wouldn't have to transformer, and then our 3 OCRs or breakers on there. Those are the 3 things that we own in there. As far as any of the high side protection, when we were in that room, all them little blue boxes, those are relays, they take care of all that stuff. So, and all the controlling in there, and then as far as like our high side breaker, that's all on them, on there. So we're in charge of the transformer and those 3 breakers that are out there. So it's,
That was a breaker with the oil that you were looking at then, right? Oh, no, that's the transformer.
transformer, yeah,
I'm
that
sorry.
was the transformer. They only had, I think they only have one real high side breaker. We actually have, can't think of the name right now, but we have a circuit switcher is our high side protection out there. And like, we don't have to pay for that as far as if that ever went down on there. So there's probably $150,000 that we're not correlated to and everything. So then they own the ground, so or the ground, and then obviously all the other stuff that comes inside the substation as far as that. So
But that transformer is, that's the big
that'd
bill.
be, yeah, winners.
And Rosebud owns theirs out there?
Yep.
Rosebud Electric gets their excess power from MRES also.
No, the MRS is basically a muni excess power. They're probably getting enough from, I don't really know how the west side of the state works as far as that goes. So they're getting their power probably mainly from WAPA.
Who?
Rosebud is.
Oh, okay.
From
They can
Bob.
get by on their allotment, huh?
I'm assuming so.
Okay.
The west side of the river is a lot different. So on the east side, and once you get up north, you got Basin Electric. So that's kind of the MRS of the co-op world. And then on the east side of the state, like if you ever heard of East River Electric, that's about every co-op owns that, and they run sub-transmission to different substations, and they're buying from Basin, and they're getting a WAPA allotment too, and they might have one other kind of secondary power source that there. And I mean, it's all interconnected, so a lot of the power that's flowing into there is on WAPA line. So, but it's just where they're getting their generation
So
from.
you're telling me Rosebud Electric lives on their WAPA allotment, you think?
I'm assuming so, as far
And their
as,
rate is equivalent to our retail rate?
Last I looked, they were just a little bit higher than us.
Oh, well, they're making a killing.
Yes.
see, that's the one thing about it. A co-op, you might build 8 miles of line for one house
Yeah.
on
okay.
there. So, let's say your electric bill's $300. How long is it going to take you to pay back that 8 miles of line? Where if we build 8 miles of line through the center of town here, we're going to probably pick up
300 connections.
at least on there. And so we're going to make a lot more money on that section.
So, again, I like percentages, and I have these percentages in my head, and maybe it's changed over time, but 70% of our power that we get is WAPA power, and 30% of it is MRES. Is that right about?
Is it 80-20?
And 30% of the cost is WAPA, and 70% is MRES or so?
It's because MRES buys their power from WAPA.
And
So they
resells it.
resell it to us at a different rate.
Well, WAPA is subsidized too. You got to remember that.
I completely, I understand that.
That-
WAPA is government, federal
MRES
dollars powered, but it comes.
MRS, they do have generation because they have a big coal generation in Wyoming.
You're right.
That's where they get a majority of their power.
Then they have
And
another one up by Watertown.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
that little hydro.
And then they
plant.
have their hydro
Hydro
dam.
plant, and they have a few other things, like Pier has its solar field, that's part of MRS too. I mean, they're picking up a little bit here and there, and so WAPA's, I mean, they got a natural gas one, WAPA, as far as the federal government on the east side. They have a backup one, 2 on the east side of the state as far as natural gas. I think they got a coal power one, then obviously they're using the hydro on there. But WAPA is, they might say, well, you're only getting whatever 5 megs allotment. Well, they're seeing their entire production generation and saying, well, this is how much we're gonna allot different things, and I don't know why. Because like Brookings, I think they get 40% of their power from WAPA, and they're running at probably a 56, 58 meg a day.
Wow.
So,
To give you an idea, our top time in the winter was 11.8
yeah,
meg.
and I mean,
Our average is 8.5.
so
8.5.
that, I don't know how they divvy it up, but that's kind of how it goes, that they're saying, well, this is how much we can generate, this is how much each town gets, and then it's like you got to pick up a secondary power generation portion. That's where MRS comes in as far as that. Heartland's another big one for municipalities in South Dakota. They kind of do more of the smaller ones, like Miller, Volga is a part of Heartland. and stuff, and that's where they pick up their power in it. So it's, MRS is kind of a cooperative. I mean, they keep it as low as they can to a point because everybody's putting it into the pool and doing it because
But in comparison to the federal subsidized WAPA power,
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's getting
You
generated.
gotta kind of think of it as, and I mean, maybe this is how I wrap my head around it. Think of it as a big water line. WAPA's putting most of the water in that water line. MRES with their coal plant and their other little deal down here, their hydro plant, they're feeding into that big main water line.
Yeah.
And so the goal is keep that water line full so that everybody can draw off it. Somebody's got to keep track of who's pumping in, how much is getting contributed into that water line all the time. That's where the MRESs come in and some of these other companies. WAPA doesn't get into doing, like MRES to us is like they're our
Accountant.
Our accountant. They're doing our billing, they're keeping track of how much power we use. They're reporting that back to WAPA, so WAPA can get an overall picture of what's going on. So, I don't, yeah, that's what MRES is, that's what the MRESs of the world do. WAPA's just, they're dams, and they're into putting, they just put it out there. But then somebody has to be the micromanager that manages who gets what and when they get it and, what times they get it. So it's way more complicated. I mean,
We would really like to go behind the meter generation of our own and use what we need to fill that allotment and then sell.
but
And I
I think a lot of people have this envision in their mind that like, well, we get 70% of our power from WAPA, and then we get 30% from MRES. There's not a guy out at the sub that's throwing, throwing on one switch and throwing another. Well, now we're getting MRES power. And that's not the way it works. And
It's
there's,
all, I mean, it's an interconnected grid system through the United States. I mean, what was it, 2-3 years ago when you guys lost power here?
Dallas.
Because of Texas down there. I mean, that was them throwing switches and saying, we're gonna divert some of the power, because there's only so much power you can generate. You look at California when they do their brownouts.
and there's only so much infrastructure to put it on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to some extent, and then, that's where they get their brownouts, because they can't generate enough power that they're consuming on there, where MRS is generating some. It's all interconnected in as far as WAPA, and because all the lines pretty much are WAPA lines coming in, and then everything like that. Like one of the things like we talked about with the engineers is like, well, if we ever built a sub, then it would be, we'd probably have to build a transmission line to wherever our next sub is, and then WAPA's gonna wanna put a breaker on it and do all these other things to keep their system intact and everything like that. Like even like the city of Worthington, Minnesota, when they had an ice storm there a few years ago, they actually have generation in their town, a diesel generator, and they were able to backfeed up onto the system and pick up a couple of their smaller towns too. So everything's kind of interconnected in a way where wherever they could pick up the load, and they talk about MRS building stuff over on the east side because that's where majority of the thing is. Well, we're closer to the coal-fired, so we're getting that power first, and then you're back over there is where they need to have more load on there.
We're closer to the coal fire in Wyoming.
Yeah.
Than the east side of the state.
I thought they trucked that down through Nebraska and up in Sioux Falls. I was at an MRS meeting where I'm pretty sure they said that.
Well,
It goes through.
they have it out in Wyoming. is
Oh,
where the
okay,
plant
but it
is.
must come through Nebraska also and then back over.
On the rail line.
For the pole, or?
They're actually,
Talking about the
we're talking about
they're
the
doing
line.
generation, burning
So
it out
long.
there.
I was taken, maybe
Yeah.
maybe I have my mind wrong with the coal's feeding over there on their tracks, but I thought that's how they wheeled it.
They might wheel the coal, they don't have.
No, the power.
The
I
power,
thought the came
it
back.
could drop down in there. It'd all depend on, I mean, they're using WAPA's lines to get it here. It's not MRS's lines to do it, so if WAPA's down there to come to here, it might be as far as that. I know like Brookings, they were north. So, you know, they'd have multiple taps coming off this generation. They might have one that goes south to pick up this or whatever it may be too.
So, good conversation, I think, but, refresher stuff, but are you fully staffed? I don't remember.
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
We got 4 other linemen, so.
Who was our latest hire? Have we talked?
Justin Dowling.
Haven't met.
He
Not
did-
supposed to talk about that?
Public.
Okay. I just didn't know. I don't think I ever knew, ever met the person.
Wait till the camera's off.
I think your clock batteries are dead because it's
It's
Quarter.
9:04.
it's 1:45.
Oh, it's not.